last time. Remember when you came and sat here at my side? First time I ever really sang my mind. Layla left you for dead, no. Upon return, nobody did I find. I lost my head, left you behind. How I wish I could have turned back that time. But today I'd say it could be a good day. The sun on ocean waves that make the spray that hurtles to my face without hurt to fill the space between me and the golden rays. Let's play upon this place of ever-cleansing slates and ever-shifting sands, and yet ever-uplifting hands. Baby, now I know I love you more than I ever even could have hoped to last time. Remember when I told you now I walk a lonely road? You couldn't even read the signs. Ready to leave me for dead, no. But upon return, still nobody did I find. I lost my head, left you behind. How I wish I would have turned back the time. Today I'd say it could be a good day. The sun on ocean waves that make the spray that hurtles to my face without hurt to fill the space between me and the golden rays. And let's play upon this place of ever-cleansing slates and ever-shifting sands, and yet
On March 20th.
ever-uplifting hands. I fell up out of love. I don't know how I came back down, 'cause I felt like I lost gravity without you around. I don't know if I am stuck or how to get around this ever-growing cavity where once my heart was found. But today I say it could be, just 'cause the way I say it could be, how to change the way it would be, and you finally understood me.
Twenty-seventh, 2017. Bruno de Mello. Silva Borges, an educated young Brazilian man in his mid-20s, suddenly dropped off the face of the earth. His family members desperately searched for a clue as to where he was. Upon entering his now vacant bedroom, what met them was something unrecognizable. Their son's room was plastered with occult inscriptions, a painting of him with an alien, and standing in the middle of the room was a 6'6" tall stone statue. But let's back up a bit. In the United States alone, around 600,000 people go missing every year, accounting for 0.1% of the total population. If we assume the same rate applies to every country, then worldwide, a whopping 14 million people vanish yearly. Every one of these unfortunate souls has a story, and we will never, ever get to hear most of them. But there are a few cases where the mystery of someone's disappearance attracts the media's attention. Back in the day, they just put your face on the back of a milk carton. Nowadays, these cases are published online, where they can be seen by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of onlookers, each with their own 2 cents to offer. However, to attract that level of attention, a case must be strange enough to pique people's interest, featuring such a strange situation that the public cannot help but follow along, wanting answers to sate their morbid curiosity. Only a very select few, with sufficiently cryptic particularities and an alluring conspiratorial mystique, are met with this kind of treatment. The case of Bruno Borges is certainly one of them. Information about Bruno's past seems to be scant at best. His Facebook account, presumably where most of his online activities took place, was deleted. But from what does exist on the internet, all of it indicates that Bruno Borges was a relatively typical young adult. What stood out was his particular interest in dense and demanding reading material. According to him, it was his way of making up for not having studied hard enough in school before entering college. Though he began taking business, law, and psychology courses during his brief time in school, he failed to ever graduate from any of them. That is, until 2014, when he took an interest in philosophy. His mother was supportive of his endeavors overall. Still, she couldn't help being concerned about how devoted he was to his obsession with unusual literature. She struggled to keep up with supervising what kind of books he chose to read. In her own words, she stated, "He began to read a lot, and, in my opinion, was reading too much. He started to buy many books, and I was worried, but always careful about what kind of things he would read. The kind of people he could talk to were intellectuals. He's enlightened. In school, he was always different, with a great capability for persuasion. He had such a good heart that he would give things from his house to other people, such as his shirts and pants. I'm not saying it because he's my son. He was very loving. He could see people's souls." According to her, his friend circle had always been populated with the homeless, mentally ill, or otherwise socially excluded people. Up until that point, though, his idiosyncrasies had never been a hindrance. His father, who was very well known locally, owned a family restaurant called Pau de Quejo and a nightclub and performance venue called Mason Borges. Both establishments were located in the city of Rio Branco, the latter of which had been operating for 30 years and is still active, hosting events ranging from pop concerts to Freemason and Rotary Club meetups. He would often post pictures of his family, including Bruno, which signaled that perhaps he wasn't really a black sheep. Other than his indirect presence in his family members' social media accounts, there's only one remnant of his online activity that still exists: a comment on a true crime website article about Anatoly Moskvin, a Russian linguist who was arrested for mummifying the bodies of 26 girls, ages 3 to 29, and keeping them in his apartment. His comment reads, "So he's accused of being insane for exhuming corpses in which the spirit has long left the vain matter which encloses the body. He is an extremely intelligent individual, and his behaviors are innovative and eccentric precisely because he's not a sheep. That's why everyone thinks it's absurd that he wants to do what the Egyptian civilization already did during the apex of its cultural development, and they're considered one of the greatest civilizations ever. I feel like I'll be the only one that understands that this guy is being accused of being a criminal, but no one knows what his true reasoning for what he did was. Burn him, like they did Giordano Bruno." The clear, "I'm 13 and this is deep" vibe radiating from his post raises a question. How much of what his mom said about him was true? And how much of it was just an old woman who thinks you're a genius when you know how to empty the recycle bin on her computer? Back in 2013, before he became interested in philosophy, he had told his mother, Denise, of a project he was working on for which he would need money. She said she would support him financially if she knew what it was about, but Bruno refused to reveal any details. He would look for other people who would trust him enough to invest in his ideas without knowing what they actually were. He tried other ways to raise money through the internet, such as selling his 80-inch flat-screen TV for half its original price on the Brazilian equivalent of eBay. However, there is no way to verify whether it sold or not. Eventually, he successfully secured 20,000 Brazilian reais, equivalent to roughly $5,000 USD, from his cousin Eduardo. He talked to him extensively and somehow got him on board with the mysterious undertaking. Bruno did reveal a small portion of what the project consisted of to him, which his cousin later spoke about in an interview. In our first conversation, I read about 15 pages of the book Bruno wrote, and since I liked it, I told him I'd help finance it. While talking to him, I noticed his ideas made sense, though he didn't tell me what the entire project actually was. He just told me it was something never before seen in the world, that no one had ever done it, and that it would become widespread very fast. I believed him and invested. This was roughly around 2016, and once he got the money he was after, he also told his mom about the book. Rather, the books. There were 14 in total that he intended to write, claiming that they would change humanity for the better. He asked for an entire year without having to work or go to college to finish it. After asking the opinion of a doctor, presumably a psychologist, he was allowed to. Bruno was a 23-year-old bookworm with no record of bad behavior who wanted to spend a year doing a literary project instead of attending college. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, they were all about to find out. On March 1st, 2017, his parents would go on a trip that would last 24 hours, during which Bruno locked himself in his room, leaving only to eat. While his parents were away, Bruno was only accompanied by his sister, Gabriella, and his twin brother, Rodrigo. He told them that he had already finished 5 books, and wanted to publish one of them. He asked his sister to read it, and after reading it twice and failing to understand any of it, she would read it once more and be blown away by its contents. On the 24th of March, he talked to his neighbor, Maria, in her driveway. He told her about the books and his plans, saying that once the books got published, he would help her and others. 3 days later, on the 27th, Bruno's parents would return from their trip, and as usual, they would go out to have lunch with the rest of the family. Later that day, Bruno's father, Athos, would drive him home, not knowing that it would be the last time he would ever see his son again. After roughly 2 p.m. on a Monday, no other family member of Bruno's would hear from him. They attempted to call his phone, but it had been switched off. Bruno had never done something like this before, so the situation was all too worrisome for his family. He hadn't even taken anything with him, not any money or identifying documentation. All he had were his clothes and a backpack with his computer's hard drive. The police deputy put in charge of Bruno's investigation had declared that he would keep all information about the case private. Despite this, a video leaked to Bruno's family members going through his bedroom, which was now devoid of all furniture it formerly had, and converted into an occult study room. The room had been decked out wall to wall and all over the floor, with symmetric blocks of encrypted handwritten text surrounded by mystical and alchemical symbols. Around the room were a set of 14 notebooks, each marked with red Roman numerals. A few images were hanging on the walls, one of a robed man with runic spirals on his back, holding an Egyptian ankh in one hand, and the other a Masonic square and compass, in front of a Rosicrucian cross. There was also the logo of Cicada 3301, and an airbrushed image of a robed Bruno with translucent eyes in an otherworldly, galactic landscape, with an also robed gray alien behind him with his hand on Bruno's shoulder. Stashed in the corner of the room were many altars of pagan deities. That leaves the most mysterious and unexplainable part of it all. In the center of his room, there was what seemed to be a magic circle, a common element of esoteric and ritualistic occult practices, and atop the circle, a life-size sculpted stone statue of Giordano Bruno, an Italian philosopher and mathematician from the Renaissance who, despite initially being a Dominican friar, became a Hermetic occultist and was found found guilty of heresy by the Roman Inquisition, for which he was burned at the stake by secular authorities. In the video, the woman speaking speculates that the statue's cost was how the $5,000 was spent. All of this significantly added to Bruno's already highly confusing and worrisome predicament. He had now been missing for multiple days. His family was mainly concerned for his mental health, considering that he had possibly suffered a psychotic break that led him to decorate his room in such a way. It is, after all, a stereotype that the mentally ill will write all over their walls. However, people online seem to gravitate more towards the less realistic and more mystical possibilities. They thought aliens had contacted him and formally summoned him to become part of some celestial council due to the great wisdom he had accumulated during his time on Earth. His vanishing was, in fact, an abduction. Well, more of a voluntarily intergalactic migration on Bruno's part. A more popular piece of speculation was that Bruno's fixation with Giordano wasn't actually because he appreciated his contributions to scientific and religious matters. In actuality, it was because he believed himself to be the reincarnation of Giordano, with some people even remarking upon their physical similarity. The sculptor of the statue even echoed this idea. When located, he explicitly said that he believed Bruno to be Giordano reincarnate, attempting to finish his life's work, interrupted by his untimely death sentence. The 83-year-old sculptor, Jorge, also clarified that the actual cost of the statue was about $1,300, meaning it remained a mystery as to where the rest of the money went. Of Bruno, he said, "Most people don't understand, but I've known him for a long time. I believe he is Giordano Bruno reincarnated. I can't say more than that. The only thing I can say is he's finished the books that Giordano left unfinished. I want to tell his mother and father not to worry, that he is fine and will return to present this beautiful, fantastic projects to the world." Despite this somewhat cryptic message, Jorge declined to know Bruno's actual whereabouts. He did show the police officers the last messages he exchanged with Bruno through text. In these interactions, Bruno complimented his work on the statue while referring to Jorge as Master Rivas. He was satisfied with the state of the project, and soon, the world would come to know his work. Shortly after, Bruno's father posted an 8-minute video of himself commenting on the situation and the internet's reaction. He asked people not to judge, speculate, or make any claims based on their misconceived notions of who Bruno was or why he did what he did. He asserted that his son was exceedingly charitable and would never have done this for attention. All the while, he apologized for not having believed in his son's project. This didn't help because, for most of the video, he didn't exhibit the kind of behavior you would expect from a father whose son went missing just 3 days prior. He spent most of the video describing and promoting Bruno's project, despite supposedly not knowing what it was about, but promised to translate the cryptographed manuscripts and publish them as books. Needless to say, it was weird for a concerned father to be that calm during his son's disappearance. Additionally, he was visibly reading from a script, saying he was confident his son would return to put his signature on the project eventually. Quickly, people took to thinking that this was, indeed, a classic example of a publicity stunt and that his family was in on it. Stranger still, news outlets covering Bruno's case revealed a crucial detail. The last time he was seen wasn't by his father, as we were led to think initially, but by security cameras near his house a full day after his disappearance. All of this mounted into a bizarre set of evidence that cast doubt on the whole story. As the pieces that didn't fit together kept piling up, it didn't hinder the more superstitious portions of Bruno's online following for 1 second. They continued to claim that this all had to do with UFOs, reincarnation, and other equally outlandish things. The family didn't seem to mind this, once again calling their honesty about the situation into question. On the 23rd of June, 3 months after his son's disappearance, his father posted what looked like a 3D render of his son's now translated book. It was titled Theory of the Absorption of Knowledge, sitting next to a lamp in a somber, outdoor environment. The book would only be released an entire month later, on the 21st of July. How and why was this happening? Well, the police, who were unfazed by the air of mystique that had accumulated around the disappearance of Bruno, continued to investigate. They eventually discovered that on the day of his disappearance, Bruno made another listing on an online sales website. This time, he promised the Philosopher's Stone, the central objective of most esoteric traditions that can purportedly make you immortal, transcend reality, or a combination of the two. He put it for sale for a measly $5, which is mighty charitable of him. It had a 100% 5-star positive rating by 7 votes, though only one buyer had given it a like. It had a 1-day delivery and had already been ordered 12 times. We should be looking out for the 12 Brazilians who bought this and became immortal. The description, which was typed out in English, read as follows: I have discovered the greatest mystery of the world, how to make the Philosopher's Stone, also known as the Elixir of Life. This will change humanity as we know it. You can benefit from my magnum opus at the click of a button. You will get a neatly formatted PDF ebook with all the details on how to do this yourself. As soon as you order, you will get this immediately. The world needs this information. Tell everyone about it. Who would have thought that the greatest mystery of our time would be revealed in an ebook PDF? Also, on the same day that Bruno went missing, he went to a notary's office to formally register what was dubbed Project Enzo. This was the publishing contract for his books, wherein it was revealed that he had established a business partnership with his friend Marcelo de Souza Ferreira in order to get 15% of the book's profits. Another notable clause in the contract was a 3-year-long period where an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, would be in effect, meaning Marcelo could not reveal any details of the project to anyone without Bruno's permission. For some reason, when this was looked into, another company registered in Bruno's name turned up online, but this one claimed Bruno was a supplier of prepared food items for companies, whatever that means. When this was discovered, the police asked Bruno's mother if she knew any of this, to which she replied, "That is one line of investigation of the police. It doesn't mean it's true. I've always known of the project. Marcelo was Bruno's helper, as in he was hired to help him. He worked for Bruno, and Bruno paid him a salary. Of the 4 books that I've read, I guarantee this isn't some kind of scam." Gabriella, Bruno's sister, would also speak on the matter. "Ever since his disappearance, we've known of the contract, and this never meant much to us, especially because, for Bruno's plans to work, he needs money. After all, you can't build hospitals and help those in need just with the love in your heart, so don't even start. What's the problem with him making a contract to help friends that helped him? The problem is people always find a way to denigrate the image of a good person that only has plans to help their neighbor. It's a lack of love, of empathy. It's measuring someone else according to your own ruler. Everyone who knows Bruno knows exactly what is in his heart and what his real intention with the publishing of his work is, which, by the way, is very interesting. Soon, we'll publish the first book. These were entirely fair suspicions on the part of the police, who were legitimately trying to figure out where Bruno was so that they could move on and dedicate their resources elsewhere. Why were they consistently being met with this vague, antagonistic demeanor from the Borges family, who, all the while, kept blatantly promoting the book instead of being transparent with the police, who, at that point, were not only looking outside of the state for Bruno, but had even contacted Interpol over Bruno potentially having left the country. It was later discovered that Bruno's encryptions were actually extremely basic letter replacements through the Masonic cipher from Disney's Junior Woodchuck's guidebook. To make matters worse, the texts, despite being full of $10 words and technical terms, were rife with bad grammar, according to the dedicated Portuguese-speaking people who were skeptical enough of the story to try and decode the images of text that were made available. In addition to discovering that Bruno was picked up by security cameras, there were a number of people who had witnessed Bruno after he had left his home. To begin with, a cab driver named Antonio, who picked him up about a mile away from his house, said that Bruno spent all of the 15-minute-long drive on a phone call, seemingly receiving instructions or directions from whoever was calling him. The taxi driver let Bruno off at a tailor, where he, along with his friend Marcio Gaiote, would commission 3 tunics like the one depicted in the painting in his room. When asked by the tailor if the robes were for a church, he said, "Almost. These robes have never been found." This same friend, Marcio, would later speak to journalists, saying that Bruno was planning to go live in isolation in a cave, and that he had fasted for 12 days while he worked on the books, which, considering the direction this story is taken so far, is probably not true. A childhood friend of Bruno's, Thales Vasconcelos, claimed to have helped Bruno encrypt the books, also mentioning that Bruno spoke of astral projection, which is believed to occur when you meditate so hard your soul leaves your body. Another person, this time a family friend and doctor, said that Bruno's project was being helped along by the spirits. He tacitly admitted that this was a euphemistic way of saying Bruno heard voices. Another childhood friend of Bruno's said that he had experimented with hallucinogenic teas, and that his isolation might have been to go visit a native tribe to engage in ayahuasca rituals. After leaving the tailor, Bruno was seen going to a motel, though the people working at said motel claimed he never entered the establishment, believing instead that he went into the forest behind it. There, he was supposedly performing secret rituals, though no one seems to have an idea of what the performance of those rituals consisted of, but presumably he must have also been accompanied by Marcio and Marcelo. It was only on the 31st of May that, after discovering the publishing contracts, the police arrested Marcelo, or, more specifically, he was taken to the police station for having falsely claimed that he hadn't known of Bruno's whereabouts after he disappeared. In Marcelo's phones, they found text messages to Marcio claiming that they would become rich from the marketing strategy they had planned from the rollout of Bruno's books. While investigating this connection, they also discovered that Bruno's furniture had been moved to Marcio's house. And not only that, but that Bruno's mom knew of it too since the start, also concealing this information from the police. In an interview, Marcio would speak about some of what Bruno had told him before disappearing. Bruno was very simple, humble, which caught my attention. I even taunted him, asking him how he planned to live in a cave if he didn't know how to fry an egg. I told him that he would have to hunt, make fire, that kind of thing, and that it was better for him to just get an apartment and still read his books. He only drank water, saying that it was better for him to work in that state. I was even worried about him, telling him that he should eat. Bruno got very thin in the last few days to finish the project, but he didn't give me any other information so that I could tell you what the project was about. I asked him why he wanted to put a statue in his room, and he just said it was a part of the project. When I did, he had begun to write something on the floor, but the walls were still intact. A friend from Bruno's college named Jamie also reiterated that Bruno was considering some kind of publicity stunt in order to get rich off of his works. Despite this blatant obstruction of justice, Marcelo was never charged with anything, and the police simply abandoned the case of Bruno, as clearly this was a marketing campaign and nothing more. When it was published on the 20th of July, the book did indeed get massive amounts of attention, garnering over 15,000 readers on the first day of its ebook release, though the negative criticism it received was quite scathing. The bad reviews it got are deserved, even without the publicity stunt, because, from what's available online of it, it seemed that Bruno's book was a vaguely connected compendium of people he considered sages, including Hitler, Gandhi, Michael Jackson, Jesus Christ, and of course himself. Other than the glaring grammatical errors made throughout the entire book, which were ironic considering how much emphasis Bruno put on being an intellectual, he also spent large portions of the book simply retelling grade school tier historical facts about philosophers that were seemingly copied straight from Google. Bruno also claimed that when he was 20 years old, he spent a week sleeping only 30 minutes a day, and some days he didn't sleep or eat at all. Though this, he says, was exceptional, as usually he sleeps a regular 2 to 4 hours a day. His instructions to become a sage like him were to stop having sex, isolate yourself from the world, become vegan, and become ambidextrous. The reasons he gives for this are that some famous scientists also had at least one of these characteristics, and Bruno himself, as the quintessential sage, has all of them. According to him, he's actually gone beyond vegan, eating only raw, uncooked vegetables. I don't think this guy had to try very hard to not have sex because, I doubt anything even works down there from this kind of diet. As you can see here, if you have sex and you eat meat, you can only spend 33% of your time acquiring knowledge. But if you're an asexual vegan, you can spend a whopping 85% of your energy absorbing wisdom. Sounds about right. Wonder what happens when you switch to an all-soy diet. Like seemingly every schizophrenic person, he's big into diagrams. As you can see here, his demonstration of his discovery of new knowledge is what appears to be the kind of equations you would probably learn in elementary school. For some reason, there are not one, but two thought bubbles with the all-caps words, "A new knowledge was generated," giving continuity. To give you an example of how redundant and unreadable his book is, here's a small translated excerpt of Bruno's magnum opus, which he spent $5,000 and 4 years developing. We see that the easy path is a line with no curves, straight and uniform. Notwithstanding, the hard path is well described as having innumerable curvatures, and precisely for it not being uniform, you cannot see its end. Differently from the illusion caused by those who follow the easy path and think that they can see the end of the line, this new way will be full of barriers, and few are those who dedicate themselves to them. To have an appropriate notion of how treacherous it is to permeate this course, as well as glorious and virtuous, it is enough that we base ourselves on the lives of great men who came to Earth. Altogether, it is necessary to first learn of the ways to follow this direction, and they shall be divided in two as well. Did you catch any of that? Yeah, me neither. It seems that his masterpiece consisted mostly of expounding on obvious things, or alluding to some kind of secret or harder to access knowledge that he never made an effort to actually convey to the reader. All he did was give the impression that he had some great and hidden information without actually disclosing it. In the wake of Bruno's disappearance and the release of his books, many groups popped up attempting to decode his mysterious words and his supposed alchemical knowledge, garnering up to tens of thousands of people in websites and Facebook groups dedicated to it. Though after realizing how insignificant and vague Bruno's knowledge was, they quickly disbanded. However, the story doesn't end there. 4 months and 14 days after the beginning of this ridiculous odyssey, Bruno returned. On Friday the 11th of August 2017, at 5:22 in the morning, Bruno would reappear on his family's doorstep, severely underweight, dehydrated, and with no shoes on. Because of his untimely return, and the fact that no one was expecting it, he had to wait over an hour before a neighbor called his father and told him to go check who was at the door. In an interview, his father said, "When I saw him, we hugged very tightly and my legs got weak. He held me so I wouldn't fall. As a gift for Father's Day, for me there was no better thing." As for Bruno, he would retain a cryptic air about his absence, only giving a few hints as to the nature of his disappearance, saying, "What I can say is that I was isolated. I had no access to anything, or else it would destroy my objective. I sought isolation precisely so that I wasn't interrupted by the collective. What matters is the objective. I was in nature. I did a study about the place I was going, and what I would need to do to maintain myself there." When informed of how much stress he put his family through, he would add, "I don't regret isolating myself, but not having told them about what I was going to do is one of the things I regretted most in my life. It was a big mistake I made to not have told them. They have a great concern for me, and I thought that with what I left behind, everybody would understand that I had left to seek out the truth of life the moment they saw the way I left my bedroom." The police, however, saw this as an opportunity to finally close in on Bruno with their theory, which at this point was a virtual certainty, that his vanishing was nothing but a marketing ploy to get his book some traction. On August 15th, Bruno gave a statement to the cops admitting that he disappeared of his own volition, and that he wasn't coerced by any external force. A little over a month later, as things cooled down, Bruno would once again comment on his own situation, revealing that since his return, he had gained almost 30 pounds of the weight he had lost while gone, and that his condition was so bad that he needed IV fluids for a while. On the reactions his vanishing and his book had, he would say, "Since I didn't have contact with anything and always had a lot of faith in this project, I was hoping that the reaction was different. Besides the fact that, in my own studies, I conclude that whoever innovates tends to be antagonized or met with hostility. But I wasn't prepared and was a bit surprised with the reactions, since my intentions were good." A couple of days later, he would open up his bedroom for guided visitations, since he considered it to be a greatly misunderstood work of art, complaining that people didn't realize how inspiring and potentially touristic it was. He followed this up with claims that he read the New Testament at least 16 times during his absence, and that he had material for 20 more books. That's right, just one book wasn't enough. He wanted to do 20. He also said that his original plan was to be isolated for 3 to 5 years, but that his experiences in the first 2 months had already done whatever trick he expected them to. He seemed to genuinely believe that, by the time he returned, the book's publishing would have changed the world, and everyone would be slobbering all over it. As for the criticisms of his book, he would judge them to be simply because of how resentful and defensive society gets when someone breaks a paradigm. He says he denied fame and fortune, as when he returned, he received over 100 requests to appear in TV shows and YouTube channels, or even to do advertisements, all of which he refused. However, the friends with whom he did this project would also come to question the truth of what he was saying, since as it turns out, Bruno ended up not paying them the percentages he was contractually obliged to, resulting in a lawsuit, in which Marcio legally requested that the publishers retained the profits until the matter was cleared. According to Marcio himself, he was owed 4% of the book's proceeds every 10th day of the month, and he got precisely 0 of it. It would then become public that, just in the brief time since the book had been released, it had already sold over 20,000 copies, each for 24.90 Brazilian reais, which equates to a lump sum of about 500,000 Brazilian reais, or almost 100,000 US dollars. Borges hadn't even informed Marcio how many books were sold, going as far as acting as if there was no money to speak of. Ultimately, this led to Bruno saying he would never charge any money ever again for people to read his writings, exclusively publishing them for free on the internet in the form of PDFs. Though this might indicate some degree of sincerity on the part of Bruno, him and his lawyers were still dragging their feet to not show how much of the profits he was taking in. Additionally, the claims about values they had made to Marcio were being contradicted by the claims of the publishers, so certainly at least some lying was occurring. Though the end result of the lawsuit seems to have not been publicly reported on, presumably this must have been settled since we haven't seen any more news about it since the last disclosure. As far as the fallout of Project Enzo goes, this is it. But what of Bruno Borges himself? What has he gotten into since? Other than going back to college for psychology, though he should be the one going to a psychologist, he put up an Instagram account which is still active to this day, in the bio of which he entitles himself the author of the Decoded Voynich Manuscript. If you're unaware, the Voynich Manuscript is an entirely different can of worms. It's a medieval document written in an incomprehensible language, with illustrations of plants that don't exist, which remains a mystery to this day. It seems right up his alley, though. We also have a link to nothing less than an NFT collection on OpenSea, where he apparently is selling a total of 231 NFTs of his translations of the Voynich Manuscript, which are, obviously, just him randomly replacing the text in the original document with his own musings. It truly seems to be the scam that never ends. In his website, brunoescritor.com, there is an archive of the pictures and books from Project Enzo. As it turns out, he stuck to his word as far as making the rest of the manuscripts available for free online. And here, we find that Enzo is essentially the protagonist in a series of fanfic-tier novels as a self-insert for Bruno, where he could play out his fantasies of being a philosopher in Greek antiquity, whose daring and innovative truths threatened the establishment. It's worth noting that most of these books are extremely short and make little to no sense at all, which is to be expected at this point. The self-entitled Alchemist of Acre, Bruno Borges, varies in his topic choice, from non-fiction texts like the TAC, to treatises on psychology, to insane fantasies of Enzo waking up on another planet. But that's not all. There is another project listed on his website, one called Project A2, laid out in a similar fashion to Enzo. In its synopsis, Bruno claims he's invested 50,000 Brazilian reais into it, and once again, expects it to change the world. The first thing here is a translated Voynich manuscript we've already gone over. Funnily enough, the second book is called The Universe of a Schizophrenic, with this monstrosity for its cover art. And this time, with the author's name listed as Aloha Alai, which I haven't had the slightest idea what it's supposed to mean, actually, but yeah, it's there. The third book follows the same pattern, but the fourth is a little different. This one's explanation is that it's meant to invoke in the reader archetypical senses of the collective unconscious and how they relate to the concept of Lucifer to free people from the chains of organized religion. That's right, church is a scam, become an edgy Satanist instead. How anyone doesn't see this guy as a glorified 13-year-old Redditor just continues to befuddle me. There's also another page with a video attachment to it. It seems to be copying that old creepy video where a guy in a plague mask has a blinking light in his hand that's full of codes, but with a tenth of the aesthetic sensibility and production value. The page of images for Project A2 is just as hideous and confusing, and this time, I don't think anyone will go through the effort of decoding all of this crap just to see more wannabe mystical truisms from a possibly mentally ill guy. Seemingly, all of the images contain references to Cicada 3301 again, as well as a recurring and very poorly made illustration of a guy with a blindfold bleeding from his eyes, but with a third eye on his forehead, which we can assume is another self-insert of Bruno's, with prophecies scrawled on his body and around him, as well as the number 666 a whole bunch of times. It's so scary, I'm positively pooping in my panties. Sorry. Other than another set of images involving the Kabbalistic Tree of Life with a bunch of Egyptian symbols on it, not much else is present by Project A2. And since this one was never attached to a publicity stunt, it remained in obscurity, perhaps for the best. Here's hoping he doesn't disappear on us again. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. Despite the intentional hype that built around the story of the mysterious Brazilian guy who vanished after supposedly discovering the secrets of the universe, it turned out to be somewhat of a nothing burger, cobbled together by a creative and dedicated man, though severely lacking in foresight, with too much time and freedom in his hands from being born into a relatively well-off family. This is not that surprising, to be honest, considering how often scammers, con artists, and otherwise not exactly upfront and honest people target esoteric circles, primarily because of how trusting and unorthodox they are. I mean, in a demographic that seems to regularly find something of value in drinking pee and doing coffee enemas, does it shock you that a disappearing act like that would work to sell more books? It could be worse, considering Brazilian spiritualist John of God used his position of power to do far more nefarious things than Bruno could or ever would aspire to. So I'm thinking we should appreciate how benign and immature this whole ordeal was, relatively speaking. Honestly, just from my little career reviewing extremely online people's careers and their misdeeds, it's sort of a breath of fresh air to cover some guy who, at worst, wanted to make a little money selling some schizo books online to credulous buyers. Though I doubt we'll ever hear from him again to any significant degree, at least it was a fun tale to get through. I do wish that, eventually, he reveals where he went during the time he was gone. It would be pretty funny if he was, I don't know, like sleeping outside a Burger King for 4 months or something to that effect. On top of that, though the books blew hot wind and were a total letdown, the bedroom statue antics are still attention-catching to this day. ARGs have a lot to learn from this guy as far as making things visually captivating and communicating a mysterious vibe. Regardless of all that though, it seems I'm now doomed to go back to my regularly scheduled programming of looking over the details of the catastrophic lives of insane, degenerate sex offenders that are addicted to drugs. Wholesome, I know. I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone. Diss tracks, roasts, clout, irrelevant. Words that likely come to mind when you hear the name Rice Gum, the online alias of Brian Quang Lee. From 2016 to 2019, Rice was one of the most popular people on YouTube. His blown out, oversaturated thumbnails could be... On March 27th, 2017, Bruno... Innocence until proven guilty has been the mantra of the justice system for centuries. But when it comes to e-celebs, it's often the opposite. Many creators have been targeted by cancellation attempts over the years, and there have been a fair number of cases when these attempts were proven valid and had merit. However, sometimes these attempts are completely unfounded and more like a witch hunt. Several times now, influencers have had their entire So recently, one of the little sagas I covered on my channel was regarding Miss Breezy. She was a YouTube, like, brony animator type person, and she was working for a very popular animator named Meat Canyon for a while on his second channel, Papa Meat. She was editing his videos, and she ended up releasing a live stream where she, quote-unquote, exposed him. She kind of posited it as, like, she was mistreated as an employee, and he was really shitty to her. In reality, what actually happened is she was a bad employee, and she got fired for not doing work. He then gave her a hefty severance package, which she didn't need to give her, but he gave it to her anyway. And then after that happened, she made this live stream where she shat all over him, said that his ego was too big, made a bunch of nebulous statements, you know, whatever. And she also did something really funny where she claims that the severance package was actually hush money that she was paid to, like, keep quiet, even though there was no NDA, there was no, like, agreement that it was hush money. She just said it was hush money for some reason because she's like a paranoid person. I don't fucking know. So I saw this when I was on live stream. I reacted to her stream live. I criticized that I had a lot of choice words for her. I think I said at one point that if she doesn't want to work, then maybe she should just go be homeless, which Oompaville ended up putting in his video. You can complain about that all you want, but that's just business. And if you don't want to be involved in businesses, then go be homeless, I guess, or something. I don't know.
That's one way to do it. For sure, dude.
And you know, definitely harsh words from me, but I stand by it. Can't say I'm gonna take that one back because I meant it. But it appears that Miss Breezy has decided to completely dip from the internet now. So I made my, you know, response to her initial stream, then I made my response to her follow-up stream where she talked about it. And she kind of seemed to acknowledge in the follow-up that, like, she fucked up and she was being kind of crazy and kind of silly, and she never should have made the video like exposing Meat Canyon. And now the latest update is that she has completely run from the internet and deleted her YouTube channel.
Oh no!
So currently, if you look up Miss Breezy on YouTube, you can see her channel doesn't even pop up. You can see my video, Papa Gus video. You can see a random Meat Canyon video. This video from Just Jargon from 2 years ago called The Rise and Fall of Miss Breezy. Haven't watched this video, but it's probably pretty good. Just Jargon seems to do pretty good stuff. Here's my original video, Papa Meat just got exposed. But you can't even really see anything about her channel. I'm curious if anybody has re-uploaded videos. It looks like some people have uploaded it, but like years ago. I feel like this person is actually literally uploading the videos right now, so they probably have them all archived beforehand, but her channel is completely gone. Now, she never made an explanation on YouTube as far as I can tell. I was searching far and wide across the land to see if I could find any explanation of where she went. Couldn't find it, but I did manage to find some explanations on Twitter, which appear to have been posted on her Instagram at some point. We have Miss Bree Boss saying, I just deleted my channel. I just don't have the capacities to deal with all this drama. I don't have the time in my life to respond to every nitpick of how much of a fuck up I am. I'm just far too busy, and all this hate is killing me. Now, as far as being busy, I don't think that's... Is that really true, though? Is that really... You don't even have a job right now, so is that... Is that really true that you're busy? I think it's just that you talked and you got hit. And a lot of people are, people who are fans of her are a little bit upset about this, and understandably so. They like her animations or whatever. They want to see her continue to prosper on YouTube. I understand being upset about that, but at the same time, like, unfortunately, the creator that you love so much was employed by a larger YouTuber, lost that job because of her own problems, ended up trying to expose him, and got owned on the internet, and is now, like, deleted her channel. And, if she genuinely feels that her YouTube channel is not good for her, or she can't handle it, I mean, I kind of applaud this decision, like, if she wants to do that, but I don't really feel a lot of sympathy for this person. Like, you came out against a popular YouTuber and tried to expose them, in my opinion, falsely, under false pretenses. I think her emotional understanding of events was completely flawed, and now she's decided to leave the internet because she couldn't take the hate she got. And I remember during the streams and stuff, she was like, I'm not trying to make this a thing. I'm not trying to make this like a thing where everybody talks about it and like it's like hateful, Like, she said that, but it's like, this isn't a call out, guys. This isn't drama. But like, obviously it is drama. Like, you called out a massively successful YouTuber claiming that he mistreated one of his employees. Obviously people are gonna have a problem with that. Obviously people are gonna criticize that or want to talk about it. Whether you're right or not, it's gonna be a different conversation. And like, you were just wrong. You got owned. You got owned, dude. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you got owned. I don't even like saying that people got owned anymore, okay? I'm a nice guy. I'm trying to be a nice guy. But you did get owned, and rightfully so. I'm sorry. Yeah, you got owned. Now, this isn't the only post. There's a few others. I know it's my fault. I'm not denying that, but I'm done. I'm gone forever. So I guess she just, all of the years she put into YouTube, this one situation just was like too much for her mentally to handle. I guess she's not mentally a very strong person, if that's the case. But at least, I mean, she seems to know that it's, it's her fault. She effed it up. I feel like, even with this video, even if she had never apologized for what she did to Papa Meat or whatever, and owned up to her mistakes, even if she'd never done that, she probably could have just continued uploading the animations she liked making and making other content. Probably would have watched it, I mean, she got some hate, for this, but it wasn't like the biggest drama / controversy of all time. My video had like 300,000 views. My second one had like 200,000. I think Oompa Bills. What did these Oompa Bills have actually? Is it not here? Wait, am I tripping? This video gone? Did he take it down? Wait, oh, I found it. Wait, why was I? Oh, it's unlisted. He unlisted the video. Okay, that's why. I guess he probably unlisted it because he didn't want to direct hate towards a person or something. But I don't. I'm a fucking commentary channel, okay? Like, I'm gonna make videos about people. I'm gonna say what I want. Am I supposed to feel bad if somebody makes a mistake and like gets owned online? Like, am I supposed to feel bad for them? People do it to me all the time. People roast me. They destroy me. There's fucking people who just don't like me because I'm like corny, because I'm a corny, quirked up white boy. Like, am I supposed to have like sympathy for that? I feel like I'm not. And ultimately, like, if she genuinely felt like she couldn't handle the hate, then I could best do that. If she's willing to make public statements trying to defame other creators, and then can't take the backlash, like, good for you for leaving, I guess. Like, imagine the backlash that Papa Meat or Meat Canyon was getting initially from everybody thinking that he was like a horrible employer.
Dark made a video on it. This is like the first sort of response video to this. And if you know Tom, Turkey Tom, he's not one to shy away from sharing his thoughts and opinions about people personally. He made a lot of jabs at Bree, and some people in his comments are calling him trans.
Turkey Tom really does show his hand with his political opinions the second a trans person is mentioned. I can't think of a single trans creator that Turkey Tom doesn't have a problem with. Miss Breezy hearted those comments. I didn't even realize that. It's not a trans thing, dude. I don't care, okay? Okay, listen, we'll make an official public statement, okay? Official public statement, okay? A lot of people, I think, when I criticize a trans person, especially trans people online, will be like, it's because he's transphobic. I don't care if you're trans, okay? I'm fine with it. I think you should be able to do whatever you want. In a very literal sense, I support trans rights, I guess. Like, you should be able to do whatever the fuck you want. But also, if you're a trans person and you make a fucking mistake or you're dumb, like, I'm allowed to criticize you, right? Like, I can criticize you, and I'm going to. It's my job. I wouldn't be doing my job very well if I was making exceptions just for someone being trans. I can think of a single trans creator Turkey Tom doesn't have a problem with. I mean, I've never really said anything about Chris or Mr. Beast, right? That's a trans creator. I don't fucking care about Chris or Mr. Beast. Who have I criticized as trans? Like Keffels and Miss Breezy? I think that's it. I'm sorry, but if you're a shining example of like trans representation as fucking Keffels, then maybe you should get some better representation or something. But that's besides the point. My criticism literally had nothing to do with them being trans, and I don't think I said anything about them being trans even in the video. There definitely are some comments out there. I'm not the comments. I don't control the comments. People are gonna say what they want in the comment section. I don't really give a shit. What I care about is what I have to say. What I had to say is that Miss Breezy was dumb. It had nothing to do with being trans. But someone like Miss Breezy would love the reality to be that, oh, he's just criticizing me because he's transphobic. He's criticizing me because he's transphobic and he hates trans people. And I actually didn't do anything wrong. But instead I'm getting hate because I'm trans. Because I take hormones. Like, dude. I didn't even mention that in the video. And okay, let's say secretly I was transphobic. Secretly I hated trans people, okay? Would all of my criticism go out the door? Like, the criticism exists independently. The criticism is what it is. I made points that have nothing to do with the transness. So, yeah, like, this is completely ridiculous. What the fuck is wrong with these people, okay? Miss Breezy is stupid. She was a silly Billy. She's being a silly Billy for a decent amount of time. I criticized her, I called her out. That's literally it, okay? That's literally it. It's not about being trans. Why does everything have to be about being trans with you people? He's transphobic. Fuck off. Drink a Core Power, okay? Drink a Core Power strawberry banana protein shake and come back to me, okay?
He's very critical of her in the video, which I completely understand.
Where's your money? That was fun. That was true. Whole channel views. 340 million channel views. I mean, she's in like a decently nice apartment.
Tom also says that she just got her feelings hurt because of things that happened outside of work, and says that they're not pertinent to the situation.
This is very just like my feelings are hurt because of things that happened to me outside of me, Canyon. I feel bad for her being. I just don't understand why this is hurting at all. This issue.
Definitely understand where he's coming from, but I do disagree. I think that things that happen outside of work are fairly pertinent because it affects your work. For example, there are things that have happened to all of the people on my team that have massively affected the way that they work in the company, and I've given people a month off before, and it's been, you know, tough for everyone involved, but at the end of the day, it's still important. These are people, right? They're not just numbers.
Yes, they are. That's not true. They are just numbers. But okay, that's funny. Base, but okay, I don't actually think that. Or do I? Okay, yes, people are not just numbers. People are people. That's true. But the reality of the situation is, if somebody, because of their personal circumstances, is consistently hurting your business, then you're probably going to want to fire them, which is basically what happened to Miss Breezy. Due to her fucking alcoholism and, you know, a few other things. I think she said she got roofied or something. Due to those factors, she was unable to work and was, you know, not getting things done on time. She wasn't meeting deadlines. And as a result, after a prolonged period of like understanding with her, eventually they fired her and gave her a severance package. And like, it sucks, but like when you're running a business, if somebody needs to take fucking a year off work or something, like go do stuff, you're not gonna want to work for that person. Like, you can't pay them out the ass. Some multi-billion-dollar corporation will give people sick leave for weeks, they'll give people, you know, injury leave or stuff like that. And that's fine. Like, even small businesses can afford that sometimes. They'll give people maternity leave. When you're running a smaller business, it's harder, you know, when margins are not as crazy. BK does make a lot of money, but he's not making billions a year. It's still money in, money out that he has to account for. So you have to, you have to think about these things.
At least that's what I keep telling myself. I do disagree, though, genuinely. Tom also raises the very important and basic question of how likely is it that she's going to find editing work in the future when the last guy that paid her for editing, she's just...
It was based in Red Pill. Wait, he's right. He's right.
Talking over a bunch of nonsense and not providing any sort of real evidence or anything like that.
Do you think someone's going to hire you again after you do this? After the last guy who edited for you? Or sorry, the last guy who paid you to edit, like you just go and talk him after he does the work? Oh, wait. Base? No, listen, I hope she's not broke forever. That's not real. It is real. No, it's not real.
Or is it?
It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. That's not my real opinion. I don't think it's real. I also can't trust my own thoughts and emotions and judgment because I'm a schizophrenic person. So anything I say is sort of up for interpretation. So always keep that in mind when watching my videos. I'm also gay. Wait. Cancer. I'm gay and I have cancer. Pick a battle, foo. Good idea, bro.
She's spilling the proverbial beans, and there isn't a lot of valid criticism here. And in regard to the more severe allegations, there is absolutely zero proof and validation to anything. He's a bit unpersonal in his criticism.
I mean, there was literally no evidence. No screenshot. Follow up with anything like that. So that, I mean, that was part of my criticism. And the one screenshot she did provide afterward with her follow-up response, it showed nothing. So obviously, I'm gonna be like, okay, if this stuff happened, first of all, not a big deal. Secondly, there's no proof. Thirdly, your mom. Fourthly, skippity toilet. Fifthly, I don't care. Number 6, Despacito. Like, that's just gonna be my response every single time. And so, like obviously, I'm gonna be somewhat impersonal towards this person. I don't know that. Am I supposed to like? Oh, I feel bad for them actually. No, dude. I love you, Umpaville. Not you, Miss Breezy, brah. Keep watching.
He wraps it up, calling her entitled and saying that if she doesn't like how businesses are run, she can go to home.
Obviously. Wait, I did say that. I forget I said that. So, okay, so that was crazy. That's a deadline. Work. Especially if there's other editors on the team who are doing the work properly and meeting expectations. Obviously, they're going to go for them instead of you. The way you make more money is decrease expenses and maximize profits. And it's part of them not being able to maximize profits. You got to equation. Complain about that all you want, but that's just business. If you want to be involved in businesses, then you'll be homeless, I guess, or something. I don't know.
That's one way to do it. For sure, dude. So then...
Base! That is one way to do it. That's my way to do it. I owned her, okay? I owned her. Listen, I guess, you know, my overall take on the situation, if I had to give kind of a summary synopsis, which I guess I do have to, because it's a YouTube video that I'm making. Look, Miss Breezy doesn't seem like a bad person, doesn't seem like a horrible person. Probably, you know, a chill person to play Team Fortress 2 with now and then. Maybe we can hop a Fortnite sometime with the Rick Sanchez skin. You know, I'll be Pickle Rick and have a good time. But realistically, there's someone to work with. I think they show themselves to be entitled, they show themselves to be unreliable, they show themselves to be a poor, you know, contractor, a poor employee, and that's why they got fired. That's why they got fired. And I don't blame DK for firing them. And now it seems that after talking all this, they couldn't take the heat that they were spewing after trying to expose the former employer to the team. They decided to quit. And as far as I know, they already are working on a college degree outside of YouTube. They didn't even seem to be making very much money from their YouTube channel. I don't know how that is, but they don't seem to be doing that. So maybe it's for the best that they just, you know, go and do something else elsewhere. And if they can't, you know, if the internet is too mentally damaging for you, then I would actually support you leaving. One other scenario we could have had here is Miss Breezy goes down a downwards mental spiral publicly, and we get to watch that unfold. Don't get me wrong, if that happens, I wouldn't probably make a video, but I would feel kind of bad for them because it's f***ed up, and I don't actually enjoy seeing people in extreme mental anguish. I'm not a complete psycho, and so it's probably for the best they decide to leave the internet if they know themselves well enough to know that eventually they're not going to be able to hate them, and they hate you if they're, you know, basically walking back the allegations implicitly by deciding to leave. That's probably best case scenario you can get, you know. And honestly, with all the funny stuff, base and red pilled stuff I said in the video, okay. Listen, Miss Breezy, good luck. Genuinely, good luck. I hope things work out outside of YouTube. Doesn't seem like you were cut out for it. Don't think you had to delete the YouTube channel. Probably could have kept that up. Maybe that should be reinstated sometime because you probably was pretty talented. Probably a talented person. I hope you come back someday, make some content. If not, wish you the best. I hope everything outside of YouTube works out well for you. And I hope that you get your life on track. Stop drinking and being an alcoholic. Stop going to parties where you may get roofied. Probably shouldn't do that. And yeah, I hope it all works out for you. I wish you the best. To Meat Canyon, obviously wish him the best. He's the GOAT. To Oompaville, who's also one of the GOATs, and actually sent me some candy recently that I enjoyed quite a bit. Here you can see me enjoying it thoroughly, really taking it in, soaking it in. The sour, delicious flavors of the Sour Boy. I believe I captioned this, thank you for letting me try your Sour Boy. Most tasty. Don't eat 34 bags at once. Tummy aching. It was good. I enjoyed it. I like the candy. But, you know, I wish everyone in the situation the best of luck, especially Miss Breezy. Hope you stop being, you know, whatever's going on with you, your mental anguish. The F out. You're on track. Broken.
problems. And yeah, hope everybody enjoyed watching this. Enjoyed it. With any lesson to be taken away from this, it's if you think you're mistreated by an employer or someone or anyone, like an ex-boyfriend or something, ex-girlfriend, reevaluate the situation and figure out if you were actually the one in the wrong. Because you might be. You might be the one in the wrong. If you like the video and my other videos, leave a like. If you disliked it, leave a dislike. Leave a little silly comment down below telling me your thoughts on this situation. Hope you enjoy listening to my mic stand squeak. Oh. And I'll see you all in my next video tomorrow. Bye.
And be sure to become a member. For $5 a month, they get the members-only podcast and exclusive videos that only members get. Thanks so much for your support.
I was never taught what laws there are. I was never taught what laws there are. Let me repeat, I was not taught the laws for the country I live in.
Alright, looks like this guy, Node Armstrong. I've never seen his channel, but I honestly do like his banner right off the bat. Looks like a typical video essay kind of channel. Making stuff about internet culture stuff, Five Nights at Freddy's. I guess Junji Ito is not really internet culture.
So recently, one of the little sagas I YouTube's Mount Olympus has many predictable faces. From beloved legacy Let's Players to widely respected commentary channels, it's hard to find someone that's truly out of place. Most seem intuitively attuned to what audiences want and can provide that effortlessly. However, among these familiar faces, one person didn't naturally belong, yet earned his spot at the top with the kind of hard work and vision most people can't even think of, let alone put into practice. Despite not being some people's cup of tea, his sheer diligence and dedication made him one of the most successful people on the platform. Today, we'll discuss none other than Game Theory's MatPat. MatPat was born Matthew Robert Patrick on the 15th of November, 1986, in the relatively recently established city of Medina, Ohio. His father, Robert, was a lab tech at a powder paint company, whose job consisted of testing the clear coat they spray on cars to protect them from things like acid rain, while his mother, Linda, worked as a bank teller. In and of themselves, Matt's parents were simple people with no aggressive academic inclinations to speak of. However, according to his own recollection, they spent a lot of quality time with him and incentivized him to do well at school as much as they could. Besides consistently asking Matt what he was studying, they tried their best to take part in his homework, requesting that he teach them what he'd learned at school. While this may seem minute, it sparked a love of learning for Matt, who, being a family's only child in a small town, already had little else to do besides study anyway. From a young age, he became infatuated with the idea of absorbing as much information as he possibly could and being able to relay that to his parents in a comprehensible way. It was only when he cited a phrase along with its page number from a book that belongs to a multi-volume set that his parents realized that there was, indeed, something extraordinary about their son. Matt describes his relationship with his parents as basically him being the last among equals. Despite being a kid, he was allowed to say during conversations and felt he was a part of the trio as opposed to being lesser. Equally as early onsets, and definitely personality defining for Matt, was his fascination with video games, which his parents also supported. As a matter of fact, he claims his earliest memories as a child are of those that took place in his Super Mario themed bedroom playing Castlevania on a Super Nintendo. To put it mildly, MatPat had all of the makings of a bona fide nerd. Other than a childhood accident that gave him a minor moon-shaped scar on his right palm, Matt had no impairments, but eventually he did experience issues with his eyesight and was prescribed glasses. Again, this may seem like a random detail, but Matt clarified that since he lived in a small town where extracurricular activities were very limited, his options were either sports or show choir. Due to his need to wear glasses, he wasn't really fit for football, and so Matt's fate was sealed. He was doomed to be a theater kid. Much like his previous interests, just having a hobby wasn't enough. Matt had to give it his all, and so he did. He sang in 5 choirs, became president and dance captain, and last but not least, played viola in the orchestra and performed in 6 stage shows a year. Because of his interests and general disposition, Matt obviously wasn't the most popular person, with some even speculating that his interest in theater meant he was gay. But regardless, it seems he still had a healthy social life, as in 6th grade, his friends gave him the nickname he would carry on for the rest of his life: Matt Pat. Whether Matt was super popular or not, it didn't seem to matter much to him, since he was willing to pursue his interests at the behest of everything else. Not only was he a chronic overachiever when it came to class, but he also went as far as to skip lunch so he could participate in even more classes, and not even ones that were specifically up his alley. Anything and everything was fair game for Matt, from creative cooking to outdoor survival. His commitment was so great it led him to take classes on college campuses during the summer, but according to him, this took its toll on his development in other areas. For example, he only had his first kiss in sophomore year of high school when he would have been 15 or 16, while many of his peers had long since outpaced him. While he did have a few girlfriends during his time at school, presumably thanks to his Ohio Riz, he says they'd never get physical, and invariably, the girls would always either break up with him and go somewhere else, or cheat. It's also worth noting that said first kiss only took place because of his theatrical career, as it was with a girl who was performing in the same musical as him. Due to her moving too fast in regards to getting physical, Matt became uncomfortable, causing the end of the relationship. We stan a Volcel king, though I gotta say it probably didn't help with the gay rumors at the time. Fortunately, this didn't get him down, nor did it break his laser focus on his goals as a model student, and he proceeded to graduate valedictorian with a perfect SAT score of 1600. No small feat whatsoever. While video games were still a significant part of Matt's life, they took the back seat, while his performance in both theater and academia took the lead. He got a full ride to Duke University thanks to his stellar school history, and went to college for a double major in theater and psychology, concentrating on neuroscience. Definitely a unique combination. According to Matt, college came and went without too much excitement, with one glaring exception. You see, Duke University is in North Carolina, where a girl named Stephanie Cordado was from. Stephanie and Matt were attending Duke at the same time, and during a video game programming class, which they were only attending in order to avoid math class, the two teamed up to make a mock version of The Legend of Zelda called The Epic of Stew, which was presumably a portmanteau of their names, Stephanie and Matthew. The two instantly got along very well, though according to Matt, she initially thought he was a gay theater kid for the first 6 months they knew each other. And again, can you really blame her when just the year prior Matt had featured in a play called Once Upon a Mattress, where he played an unusually zesty jester? I mean, fellas, just look at this guy, okay? You know what I'm saying. Believe it or not, being a quirked up white boy isn't all benefits. Some people misunderstand our extravagant sensibilities, but you gotta pay the price to be the boss. Believe me, I would know. God damn, this was a dark time. Let's just never go back to that time, that era. It's over. During his time at college, he hosted fondue game nights on Fridays, a stark contrast to other students who took their college years as an opportunity to drink and party. He stayed true to his roots and continued to take part in all kinds of activities, such as something he titled Hoof and Horn, where he and his colleagues trained for theatrical fights. Though he described it as, sometimes you just have to smash someone's head against a bench or stick your foot into someone's crotch to grind their genitalia into the dirt, or reach around behind someone, grab their head, and snap their neck, causing a quick and painless death. Not sure exactly what inspired such brilliant writing, but to each his own. He also took part in a few plays, including the one and only Urinetown, a play about a society in which a mega corporation controls all public toilets. As early as February 6, 2006, Matt Pat can be seen with his future wife Stephanie in a picture subtitled, "Only by force do they reveal their face in a picture with me." By October of the same year, the two were dating. For the rest of his time at university, little happened besides 3 road trips Matt did while in England, and the creation of his YouTube channel, then called MattPat13. At that time, however, it just served as a platform for him to share auditions and scenes of his theatrical performances. And believe me, I would be remiss if I didn't make a caveat here to let you witness a little bit of this for yourself.
You think that when I meet my maker, hello maker, that cat will be all dressed in red.
After finally graduating in 2009 with a GPA of 3.96, he wanted to put his plan into practice and dedicate himself fully to becoming a professional actor and/or director. So Matt moved to New York, believing it to be where he would find his success. Ideally, he wanted his degree in neuroscience not to be necessary since it was just a backup. The next 2 years, he spent traveling and working non-stop as an actor, just as he dreamed. However, he quickly discovered that this wasn't the life for him. Besides the sheer volume of work and commute being grueling with him having to live out of a suitcase, place, it was aggravated by the fact that it offered no upward mobility. During this time, he lived paycheck to paycheck, and every 3 months, he was out of a job. It was becoming increasingly obvious that he had to find something else as soon as possible. The only problem is he didn't know what that something else was supposed to be. Due to the economic crash that happened just a couple of years prior, the United States was undergoing a very rough recession at that time, which made finding employment very difficult. On top of that, Matt says that this is when he realized things like his SAT score, extracurricular activities, experiences in acting and directing, and even his degrees made him no more likely to get a job, as employers just saw him as a theater kid with no real experience. It didn't matter he had organized projects with upwards of 30 people and brought them to conclusion without a hitch. No one believed that those skills could actually translate into being an effective and productive employee. Even Olive Garden turned him down, but as the resumes he sent out literally every day continued to hit a dead end, Matt started thinking about what he could do in the meantime. Taking a brief break from focusing on the work aspect of improving his life, on November 17th, 2010, their anniversary of 1,500 days being together on the dot, Matt proposed to Stephanie, to which she said yes. Regardless of how dark this period was, this was a bright moment that certainly helped Matt keep going despite the many obstacles he was facing. One of the career paths that Matt had initially imagined for himself was working for a media company, but since no one believed in his potential, he made the novel decision to just produce media himself. Granted, his sights were set relatively low in regards to the possibilities in this area. He just wanted to grow big enough to get the attention of legacy companies so that he could work for them. If he could just prove that he could competently execute a creative media project that successfully attracted attention online, it would certainly get the attention of people who want to pay him. And so, Matt rekindled his love for video games and began working on a new project, Game Theory. At this time, Matt followed a web show called Extra Credits, and one of their episodes was about tangential learning, or how you can absorb knowledge inadvertently while playing video games because you're so mired in the entertainment of it, you don't even notice you're actually learning. To put it bluntly, edutainment, which is actually what my channel's whole motto is built off of. We're filling your brain with knowledge, yo. Upon being fixated on the concept, Matt noticed that no show on the internet capitalized on the intellectual aspect of gaming, which made it a very interesting prospect. Additionally, it would be a major boost to his resumes if he could prove he was good at doing things like math, extensive research, and video production, all while maintaining an easy-to-understand approach for, normies. Thus, he began working, studying every other online gaming show at the time, from their editing style to even their pacing to their logos and color schemes, all to ensure he would target the exact demographic he wanted. Since he was too broke at the time to afford equipment necessary to make gameplay videos, he settled on the essay/presentation style with images dynamically edited in. And since he also couldn't get a place that was appropriate for recording, he locked himself in a closet to narrate it. Just a month after the publishing of Extra Credits' video, Matt posted the first ever piece of game theory content on his channel, a promo, being a brief insight into what was to come.
Do you love playing video games? Are you tired of walking away from 12-hour gaming sessions feeling entertained, yet unfulfilled? Do you want to know more about the games you love without having to put in any work of your own? Well, now you can play and learn. That's right, Weboverse. Inspired by fellow gaming series Extra Credits, found here, we have created Game Theory, gaming's tangential learning experience.
So on April 18th, 2011, the first ever episode of Game Theory was uploaded, and it regards the accuracy of time travel in the 1995 game Chrono Trigger. Though it now sits at 2.5 million views, at the time it didn't get a stellar reception. But the people who did find it and watch it noticed that even if it didn't have the cleanest editing or the best audio quality, it did have actual effort put into it. Not only because it was Matt trying his best to impress a potential employer, but also because he was talking about one of his favorite games of all time. He actually cared. Said and done, just 3 months and 10 or so uploads later, Matt landed a gig as a freelance production assistant for GNet, where he worked on marketing campaigns for AAA video games in various ways. It was good that he was approaching the area he wanted to work in, but still, this wasn't quite it. And 5 months into this gig, their business relationship came to an end. By the beginning of the next year, the channel had accrued 150,000 views and almost 2,000 subscribers, averaging a few thousand views per video. While it was nothing to sneeze at, it was as far a cry as possible from the heights the channel eventually reached. reached. And at the moment, it wasn't exactly paying dividends. In fact, it was making nothing. Within a month of his departure from GNet, Matt was hired once again, this time as a digital strategy consultant for Reviewtopia.net, a now defunct website along the lines of channel aggregators like That Guy with the Glasses and Screw Attack. He worked for the website for 6 months, and during his time there, he evaluated Google Analytics data and gave them weekly reports, along with suggestions on how to continue growing the website. He must have done his job pretty competently since he successfully restructured the page's navigation to reduce the exit rate. But just like his last gig, it wasn't the right fit for him. Oh, and since we mentioned Screw Attack, I guess it's also worth noting that, as his channel grew to 6,000 subs and 500,000 total views, he partnered with them, though that's not quite the right word. In early June, he went to Los Angeles and covered E3 on their behalf. He was also briefly hosted on the webpage of Pat the NES Punk, a fellow YouTuber and frequent collaborator with Cinemassacre, also known as the Angry Video Game Nerd. As soon as his time working for Reviewtopia ended, he became the senior data analyst for Big Frame, a multi-channel network that included early YouTube talents such as Tay D-Storm, and Mystery Guitar Man. While he started out making Excel spreadsheets to systematize strategies for the channels they managed, he eventually got promoted to Audience Development Lead, where he reverse engineered YouTube algorithms and did wonders with people's SEO, increasing people's average video views by as much as 50% and daily views up to 40%. He also created something called Matt Pat Mondays, where he gave weekly updates on the new findings in the field of audience development strategies. Overall, he was doing his job very well, and as a result, he stayed in this position for over twice as long as he did in his previous 2 positions. According to Matt himself, Big Frame's top channel had 2 million subscribers, which at the time meant a lot. But despite this, they only had about 100 clients, meaning they were a relatively small MCN. Because of this, it seemed reasonable that he didn't make very much money despite being overworked to the gills. After all, they probably couldn't afford to pay him a hefty salary, right? Well, that would be wrong. At one point, they accidentally shared a document that listed how much each of their employees was making and how much work they were putting in, and Matt was simultaneously the most overworked and the most underpaid. This prompted him to immediately put an end to his 14-month-long journey with Big Frame and move on. By the end of 2012, Game Theory was approaching 50,000 subscribers and 5 million views. It's necessary to contextualize that Matt was working a full-time job while running his channel, and with his commute, he was busy from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. and could only work on Game Theory from 8 p.m. until midnight and during weekends. In order to keep the upload schedule he was aiming for every other Thursday, he started to get help from his friends, Gaijin Goomba, who hosted Game Exchange and later Culture Shock, Ronnie Edwards, who hosted Digressing and Side Questing, and Austin Horrigan, who hosted The Science Of. Unsurprisingly, none were nearly as successful as Game Theory, but regardless, they did play a pivotal role in establishing the brand and connecting with the audience, so much so that many people nowadays are nostalgic about the uploads from that era. On top of that, Ronnie was helping edit the videos, and Matt was looking for ways to expand his team to increase production quality and consistency. By July 2013, when he quit his job at Big Frame, his channel was already north of 300,000 subscribers and counting, with innumerable views. It's a realistic possibility that he could have stopped his pursuit of more conventional employment and just gone all out to monetize his channel. But Matt feared that, were he to begin monetizing, he would proceed to put all of his eggs in one basket, a basket that he considered unstable and shifty. That said, he postponed the monetization of his channel to whenever it hit 1 million subscribers, and instead took up work at another MCN, Break Media, or as we know it nowadays, Defy Media. For his first 9 months there, he was the senior YouTube channel manager, meaning his job was to analyze each channel he was working with individually and give the people running it customized insight on what kind of content they should and shouldn't do. If this seems trivial to you, keep in mind that this meant personally overseeing 20 YouTube channels that totaled over 30 million subscribers and over 100 million unique monthly viewers, which, at the time, even included the absolutely legendary Smosh during its peak. If he was good at what he did at Big Frame, he honed his skills as a marketer at Break Media, helping create a viral video with over 5 million views using trend data, reducing costs in certain areas of the company by a whopping 93%, tripling call to action CTR, which basically just means he got people to click on videos a ton, and achieved a record 50,000 subs in one day via content optimization. Safe to say, he was making these people a lot of money, and he became such an integral part of the company that he supervised their merger and was of essential importance in restructuring the company after it. Regardless of how effective he was, he still struggled with some aspects of the job, such as the instances where he spent a week or so scrutinizing someone's content, metadata, and analytics, only for them to ignore the majority of it. At the end of the day, egos can get in the way of good advice, and that advice is only only really worth the work that the person receiving it is willing to put in. But even with these quirks, Matt enjoyed working at Defy, so even though he also really loved doing game theory, it just didn't seem sensible to quit his job to focus on his channel exclusively. As time went on, however, it began looking like this wouldn't be much of a decision. Game theory was growing by leaps and bounds, with one of its biggest and most controversial hit videos dropping in October of 2013, titled Mario is Mental, which now stands at 16 million views, wherein Matt presents all of the evidence for Mario being a psychopath.
A master willfully putting his pet into uncomfortable situations, physically injuring them with fire, laughing at and humiliating them? Mario's lucky that the Tanuki suit is the only thing that got PETA's attention.
If that weren't enough, the channel went from having less than 100,000 subs in early 2013 to a little over 1 million by the end of the year, prompting the videos to begin being monetized and Matt and Steph to take a well-deserved trip to China and Thailand. The end of 2013 was also marked with yet another addition to Game Theory's channel lineup, with a new show, Crossover, by Drake McWhorter and Kenny Landefeld, which primarily dealt with unexpected connections between in-game universes, though it was discontinued in the same year. As Crossover ended, Drake started another show under the Game Theory umbrella titled Smash History, which instead focused on the history behind Super Smash Bros. Characters. With monetization finally in order and the continually stellar performance of the channel throughout the year 2014, first hitting 2 million subs and then finally 3, working at Defy Media began feeling like a bit of a stick in the spokes. After all, due to the time constraints it imposed on him, it sometimes meant that Matt would have to show up to work on 3 or 4 hours of sleep after staying up until 3 or 4 a.m. to finish a Game Theory video. No matter how gratifying the work at Defy was, it couldn't be as gratifying as dedicating all of his time to Game Theory. Not only was GT his and only his, but there was no foreseeable limit to how big it could get. After the 3 million subs milestone and the plethora of hit videos he'd already put out at this point, Matt took it upon himself to move away from his position at Defy as painlessly and gracefully as possible. His resignation was hardly a bridge burning, considering how both Stephanie and himself remained white label consultants for Defy's audience development arm, which isn't surprising since Matt actually enjoyed this line of work and the people he worked with. However, the Patrick's priority was now Theorist Incorporated, and just a few months in, it gets so effort intensive that Stephanie, who was already profusely invested in helping Matt out with GT from its inception, decided to quit her job as a consultant for biotech companies in order to dedicate all of her time to assisting him. This time around, there was no safety net hovering underneath their experiments with game theory, and the Patricks had gone all in, though their all in might have been too much. For the 4 months following Stephanie's resignation, they worked non-stop around the clock from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. They got to the point where they filmed themselves for 12 hours straight on Christmas Day, which both of them recall as what seriously put things into perspective for them, leading them to take a step back from the work. By this point, the show's success was a virtual certainty, as it had already been succeeding and growing exponentially for a couple of years. Game Theory also became a part of what is called Google Preferred, meaning it was part of a program that, as I understand it, made advertisers pay extra to place their ads in the top 5% most popular content on the site due to the guaranteed trustworthy status of these channels. They were cracking 1 million views on the regular, and in late 2014, the very first Game Theory video on Five Nights at Freddy's came out. The first of over 90 now, mind you, which sits at 32 million views. As the end of the year approached, they were selling bundles of Game Theory merchandise and comfortably surpassed 3.5 million subs, though it was still pale in comparison to their performance in 2015. By March, Game Theory had already cracked 4 mil, and another show was tacked onto the GT channel, A Brief History by Foot of a Ferret, which, unlike many of the other shows that were temporarily hosted on Matt's channel, wasn't discontinued, but successfully moved on to its own channel. Just 2 months later, Matt's new channel, Film Theory, was made public, followed by the creation of GT Live, a channel for his impromptu live streams where he actually played video games. Both were massive successes in their own right, and not to gratuitously aggrandize it, but Game Theory's run in 2015 had something of a Midas touch to it. Seemingly anything and everything they tried worked. The team of people working on videos doubled, GT Live went on to become YouTube's largest regular live streaming channel, while the main channel gained almost 2 million subs in just 1 year, and Film Theory amassed a whopping 1.8 million in a measly half a year, the first million of which hopped on board within a month of the channel's creation. Nowadays, subscriber counts mean significantly less than they used to, but the sheer volume of Game Theory's following is still shocking to witness. Many creators from the earlier half of the 2010s didn't make it through the halfway points, let alone continue to grow boldly. This is, at least in part, due to how comfortably Game Theory reinvented itself. with new styles of editing and formatting, but without sacrificing the feeling of familiarity that kept the original watchers coming back. It's worth pointing this out because it wasn't a fluke. In fact, it was clearly a purposeful creative direction on the part of MatPat and his team to keep the content fresh, and it definitely achieved its goal. All of this is just on the YouTube front because, behind the scenes, their work as consultants for MCNs and entities like them was picking up a lot of steam as well. In every way, this period was a peak, but for every peak, there's also a valley, and 2016 sure held a couple of valleys. It's kind of odd because on one hand, MatPat was probably the person who harnessed the hype train of Five Nights at Freddy's to its fullest extent most effectively. From his first video on the games until this day, he capitalizes on any and all FNAF-related media and gets lauded by the fanbase, even when his theories about it are considered too out there or very unlikely to be true. However, an equally popular game, at least at the time, had a fanbase that held a diametrically opposed reception to MatPat's incursions. On February 9th, Matt released the infamous Sans is Ness episode, which drew a large amount of ire upon him from the rabid fanbase behind its subject, Undertale. I get that a lot of people consider the theory far-fetched and reachy, but to me, that was always the gimmick from the get-go of game theory. If you go through his catalog, you can easily find other more egregious examples of theories that are way more far-fetched and controversial in nature, but those didn't attract even a fraction of the negative response that this one got him. To make matters way worse, just a few months later, his revisitation of Undertale came when he gave a copy of it to none other than Pope Francis. I should be more specific though, he gave the Pope a Steam key for Undertale, which further presupposed the Pope had a functioning Steam account, and I would guess the Pope isn't playing Left 4 Dead 2 in his free time. Of course, the game was not really expected to be played. Instead, it was given as a symbolic gesture due to Pope Francis having declared 2016 to be the year of mercy, and Undertale having mercy to be one of the 4 actions you can perform in every combat, so much so that you can actually finish the game being exclusively pacifist. Once again, he was lambasted, this time for supposedly using his opportunity as a representative of not just YouTubers and gamers, but of America altogether to give the Pope a video game. As you can imagine, that's far from the full story. A full recording of the meeting between Matt and the Pope is available on YouTube, and it's as uneventfully benign and fitting as you would expect, as the two discuss cyberbullying. Eventually, he made a video to clarify that he didn't waste the Pope's time talking about video games, but the damage was already done, and to some extent, the bridge between MatPat and the Undertale fanbase was severely burnt.
This was our achievement as a theorist community, as gamers, as online digital creators and people who love online things. And the hate that video received in the first week. I mean, this was a video where I specifically talk about accepting others and saying no to hating other groups of people, and it got hate. You gotta love the internet sometimes, man.
It's probably a safe bet to say that the main reason there are so few game theory videos about Undertale is because of Matt continually running into walls whenever he tried to broach the topic. On an unrelated GT Live upload, Matt recalled that during his meeting with the Pope, he was only actually hearing what the Pope said with a 10-second delay. You see, Pope Francis doesn't speak English, so a translator had to be present, hence that delay. This was of particular relevance when Matt laughed out loud at one of the Pope's jokes, only to realize that the part of the conversation he was laughing at happened 10 seconds prior, and that the Pope was talking about an impoverished orphan when he laughed, prompting a look of confusion and sadness from the Pope. I mentioned the Midas touch a few minutes ago, and I suppose this is what the exact opposite of it looks like. I'm also obliged to mention, however, that Matt was eventually vindicated in 2022 when circus performers played Megalovania, the theme of Sans from Undertale, in front of the Pope as he watched intently. He's rocking out. More serious issues were surfacing. Namely, Drake, a member of the Theorists, became severely depressed for many reasons, one of which was the dwindling performance of Smash history. Due to the added pressure of the bad relationship he was in at the time, he attempted to end his own life twice within 24 hours. After he communicated with Matt about his work for game theory, they mutually decided for him to become a behind-the-scenes employee to give him some relief. And eventually, Drake decided to focus exclusively on his own channel, though he remained on good terms with MatPat and the rest of Team Theorist. But not everything was negative. In 2016, their team doubled in size once again, as Game Theory, Film Theory, and GT Live reached the milestones of 7, 4, and 1 million subscribers, respectively. And due to their consistency with growth and relative brand friendliness, they also earned a level of trust with YouTube themselves, and landed them a greenlit show on the platform's subscription service, YouTube Red, which is now known as YouTube Premium. The show was called Game Lab, and it was basically the second season of a show that MatPat had already tried out on his own channel for free, called Reality Check. Basically, it consisted of Matt testing out a few game theory adjacent concepts in real life. From trying to do the parkour from games like Mirror's Edge, all the way to defusing bombs like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Though it did get pretty good ratings, it didn't turn a profit, which isn't surprising considering that the show's production value looked to be pretty high, and because of that, after 9 episodes, the show ended up being discontinued. However, MatPat still appeared on many other creators' YouTube Red shows, such as Scare PewDiePie. Meanwhile, the more silent facet of their extraordinary success was their ongoing work as third-party consultants, which, according to the Theorist Media LinkedIn page, around 2016 included over 25 brands. Some of their clients, such as Google, YouTube, Audible, and Ubisoft, aren't that surprising, given their background in online media creation and their relation to gaming. However, their consultancy expertise attracted the attention of behemoth companies like Walmart, Viacom, and Warner Bros., all of which goes to show that their knack for establishing successful business relationships weren't limited to running YouTube channels. Not that there's anything lesser about being successful on YouTube, after all, it's their mainstay, and given that they consulted for north of 150 channels, it's evident they never got high and mighty about it either. 2017 held continuous success for MatPat, with another tentative revisitation of Undertale, this time going off without a hitch and currently standing at 14 million views. As his series of videos on Five Nights at Freddy's raged on, with varying, though consistently gigantic amounts of acclaim, Matt did a 2-part video dubbed Global Gamer where he visited Japan, which not only was a welcome break to the routine, but was also unique in that it had 360 view and 8K quality. The only potential hiccup during MatPat's increasingly accelerating stride to another MVP year was a brief bit of static he had with fellow YouTuber The Gamer from Mars. In August 2017, GFM uploaded a video titled What Happened to Game Theory, which mostly covered the change in tone of Matt's videos over the course of time. And for the most part, it's pretty accurate. Basically, the videos used to be geared towards a relatively older audience and had a more pronounced educational aspect to them, along with more risque and mature topics. But as time went on, they became safer, both in their approach and the content itself. Honestly, whether you think that's a good or bad thing, there's no denying that this is the case to some extent. Every YouTuber who cares about preserving their channel's growth over time starts taking fewer risks as the content grows. It's just how the business works. If you plan on making YouTube your job, you have to be somewhat professional about it and make it as much like a show as you possibly can. However comfy or nostalgia-inducing it is for a YouTuber to get personal and hyper-transparent, in the long run, that degree of parasocial proximity usually ends in one of two ways. Either the YouTuber overexposes himself, which simultaneously takes a toll on his mental health and the content quality, or the audience at large becomes too familiar with the creator's faults, oftentimes including their more controversial opinions or their bad videos, and that familiarity breeds contempt. I know the corporate and brand-safe vibes throw people off, and I get it, but honestly, it's often the case that it's either that or the content has to come to an end in some way. I would say this is a fair criticism of MatPat, but it's hardly a criticism at all, more of an observation. That being said, GFM's video also included a bit where he mocked Matt's posts on social media, though again, this borders on insignificant as far as criticism and is mostly just comedy. Even recently, some of Matt's old tweets have resurfaced, and they are straight fire. That naked girl's mouth is huge! So much fail, so much. Hashtag facepalm. Popping humans, body inflation, knee stab wound, blackface, and the frequent hot women search may reflect poorly on me. So many hungry middle-aged women. Moreover, the important implication about this was that GFM heavily suggested Matt was having someone else run his social media, another sign of his increasingly corporate identity, along with him pandering to younger audiences. It seems MatPat took this to heart as during an episode of GT Live, he and Stephanie reacted to GFM's video with a noticeably defensive attitude. In it, they defend themselves from the accusation of pandering to little kids, showing their analytics and explaining that when channels have a significant audience of really little kids, what happens is that they experience a demographic boom of middle-aged viewers due to kids using their parents' YouTube account to watch the content. GFM's retort was that analytics is really shoddy data as far as age demographics, and since that means there can be no evidence confirming either side of this discussion, there's not much point in arguing it either way. Another point of contention was GFM using Game Theory's Boobs episode as evidence that the channel used to pander to more mature audiences. Though contention isn't the right word, since they seem to concede that at least that specific video was indeed very racy clickbait. In his reaction to the GT Live episode, GFM points out how long they meandered about this topic, though the GT Live format itself is prone to that sort of thing since the episodes are always on the long side, meaning topics need to be appropriately milked. Now, most of this drama, if you can call it that, was pretty silly, but as far as I'm concerned, all of that was worth it for this neat little moment.
I've actually never looked at porn as it, like, outside of
outside of...
A lot of people think he's lying here to appear more family friendly or less horny, I guess. But honestly, I don't really doubt him. As hard as it may be to believe, there are guys out there to whom that stuff isn't very appealing. And judging from his general personality, it wouldn't be surprising to me if he's one of them. In other videos, he says he grew up in a household where even swearing was unusual, so it's not that far-fetched to think he just wasn't exposed to in his formative years to any extent. Or, on the other hand, it's very possible that this white boy be straight capping, yo. Unbeknownst to the theorist team and both of their audiences at the time, GFM eventually revealed that he was being messaged by multiple other relatively known content creators, congratulating and applauding him for exposing MatPat, even though he himself doesn't think he did anything of the sort. I'm never quick to claim people are envious, but in this case, there seems to actually be a demographic who resents MatPat just for the fact that he's a gigantic YouTuber who's never been exposed or canceled or had any real major controversy. The go-to excuse for this irrational hate is that MatPat is fake or is a persona online, but no matter how far back in his history you go, or even if you catch him in real life, he's just as much of a peppy theater kid, whether you find that wholesome or extremely grating. Besides this very rare occasion of MatPat finding himself at odds with another creator, the next 2 years were a breeze, with one glaring, painful exception. While it was kept under wraps for the most part, from late 2017 onwards, Matt and Stephanie were expecting their first child. Due to the couple's steel resolve insofar as keeping the show running smoothly, they powered through GT live recordings despite the difficulties pregnancy brought to the table. As mid-2018 rolled by, the full term was approaching, meaning that their child was soon to be born. They announced it in March, and seemingly the best moment of their lives was fast approaching. But then, something unexpected happened. While their business was going well and their personal lives were going great, someone else in their team was experiencing something very different. Ronnie. As they were communicating about a project Ronnie was working on, Ronnie suddenly fell silent. After a couple of days of said silence, they decided to go to his apartment to check on him, only to be met with a coroner's notice. On July 4th, Ronnie had taken his own life. While this is a very traumatic event for anyone to experience, there wasn't a lot of time for Matt to process it, as the very next day, he was in the hospital with his wife, who was getting ready to give birth to his son. He waited a bit to address what happened with Ronnie publicly, both because they were still dealing with having a child, but also because they were trying to establish a line of communication with Ronnie's family. But due to the rocky relationship that Ronnie had with them, that wasn't possible. And as the news began to leak, he decided to make a statement through the Game Theory channel on July 25th. He also took to his subreddit to further contextualize the situation. Some of you know that in the aftermath of this year's E3, someone complained about Ronnie being rude at one of the booths and posted about it on Reddit. The story eventually spread to YouTube. Because his death happened a couple of weeks after E3, it's understandable why these things would be conflated. However, behind the scenes, there were a lot of other personal issues Ronnie was working through at the time. From our investigation, while Ronnie himself didn't realize when/where the transgression occurred, others witnessing his behavior at the event saw how there could be validity in the claims. As I mentioned in the video, Ronnie often struggled to understand how his behavior would be perceived by others. It was rarely, if ever, meant to be malicious. On our side, Ronnie was not fired over the incident. We didn't yell at him or anything like that. This was the first time we'd ever heard a complaint about Ronnie at an event like that, so we chalked it up to being a misunderstanding and moved on. I think it's important to say this because my relationship with Ronnie has been one of the longest in my life. Clearly, he was an important collaborator and a longtime friend. He kept right on working for us just as normal after E3. We spoke to him on July 2nd on the Pokemon video he was set to deliver, and he was positive, upbeat, and looking forward to delivering his next edit draft. Obviously, if I had even an inkling that something was wrong, I would have done everything possible to talk to him, be with him, or support him in whatever way I could. Since he didn't give us any clue that something was wrong, or we weren't able to read the signs, none of us would have that chance. I can't tell you how tough it is to say that.
What I can say is that he did his best to move on, to strike out on his own, to move beyond the trauma of his past, to take his mental health into his own hands and take his recovery seriously, one step at a time, every single day.
I can only imagine how gut-wrenching the situation must have been for everyone involved. Hopefully, Ronnie's in a better place. 2018 went on uneventfully as Matt and Stephanie enjoyed their newborn. 2019, however, is a much different story. From the get-go, Matt found himself once again dealing with drama coming from other creators. This time, he was being accused of plagiarizing a video by Legal Eagle. The video in question was about the legality of copywriting a Fortnite dance, and though seemingly innocuous and silly in nature, it elicited enough revolt in Legal Eagle to accuse MatPat of deliberately and maliciously copying his video. While Eagle's accusation is no longer up, Matt's response on Twitter still is, and it contains the comment he left on Eagle's video, which reads as follows. We started research into our own episode on the Fortnite dances on November 21st, when the 2 milli issues really started to take off, with a version 1 draft being finished December 12th, over a week before your video was posted. I have email chains chains and dated drafts to prove all of this. You say our analysis sounds like it came from a real lawyer, and that's because it did. Over the last year, since we've started covering more legal issues in the entertainment space, we've brought on consulting lawyers to help educate us on relevant case law. And yes, while there may be similarities between our videos, it's because we're both stating facts about the law. It's disappointing to see that you, as a respected professional in your field, would jump to conclusions based purely off circumstantial evidence, telling your audience I ripped off your video, instead of addressing this to me in a private forum first and asking for my stance. People were quick to side with MatPat on this issue, including Legal Eagle himself, who realized he may have gotten things mixed up. Thankfully, it seems the two made up and are on good terms since they have just recently collaborated. But this was just the first of a few controversies 2019 had in store for MatPat. Next up was a misgiving related to an indie game called Heartbound, which Matt played on an episode of GT Live. In the thumbnail, tags, and title, the game was likened to Undertale, solidifying that this game is Matt's arch nemesis. They also got the name of the game's studio wrong in the description and didn't link to the game in the description. These were the criticisms levied against Matt by the developers of Heartbound themselves, Pirate Software, on Twitter. The developer also took to his website to say, "On November 26, 2016, we launched a demo of Heartbound and Steam Greenlight loved it. We hit rank 1 and Heartbound was greenlit in just 10 days. A number of people also attacked us saying we were ripping off Undertale, but the majority was really positive. Even so, I reached out to Toby Fox over email to see if he had any advice. He responded stating that Heartbound reminded him of Secret of Evermore with the graphical style of Mother 3. Now we're at today, with an email and Twitter inbox filled with questions asking if I'm Toby Fox, how long Toby has worked on Heartbound, or why I stopped working on Deltarune to make Heartbound. Except, I'm not Toby Fox." Keep in mind this quote has been cut down a bit to avoid non-information portions. I'm sure it must suck to be constantly compared to another person in their game, but to be honest, when you release a game inspired by Earthbound, with a pixelated heart as its main visual motif, a year after the release of Undertale, which was massively famous, you honestly have no room to complain about comparisons. Whether it was done intentionally to mimic Undertale's style or not is not really important. If the game is good, so what if it took elements directly from another game? It's clear the dev doesn't mind admitting he mimicked the graphics from the Mother series, so how bad is it when it's Undertale? Just because it's more recent? Regardless of what the exact case is, the Undertale-related attacks from random viewers got under the dev's skin enough that it caused this overreaction to Matt's livestream. That being said, screwing up the dev's name is not good, but there's no and never has been any obligation for Let's Players to link the games they're playing in the video's description. People actually rarely do that. At worst, Matt's team did some heavy-handed clickbaiting because he knew Undertale was still hotly discussed at the time, but then again, there's nothing really wrong with clickbait as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. At no point is the metadata deliberately misleading, and Matt makes it exceedingly clear the game he's playing isn't part of the Undertale franchise, so you can't really fault him for other people being dumb enough to think otherwise. What's bizarre about this whole situation is that even after Matt explained these things on Twitter, the dev replied saying that the tags were at fault for confusing people into thinking that Heartbound was made by Toby Fox, when the tags of videos weren't even visible anymore at that time. Last but not least, Toby Fox himself also weighed in, taking the dev's side and reinforcing that all games should be linked, saying, "You went too far this time." Again, I can't help but think that part of the reason Toby took to defending this asinine point is that he already wasn't a big fan of MatPat due to his known dislike of the game theories on Undertale. Regardless, Matt did apologize for being potentially misleading with his video, and the Heartbound dev thanked him, and the matter was settled. In retrospect, I hope everyone involved in this situation sees how small, random, and honestly pointless it was, but around the same time, something much more serious happened. Though this matter was only talked about in January of 2019, the whole thing actually took place in 2018, but Matt wasn't able to discuss it at the time for legal reasons. As he retells it, Defy Media, the MCN he'd worked for in a myriad of different ways for a number of years at that point, first laid off a bunch of employees without warning, and then proceeded to shut down completely, all while owing the 50 creators that operated under their banner a total sum of $1.7 million. MatPat explains that the way MCNs work is basically a Ponzi scheme. They convince creators to join, promising a kind of institutional support that they rarely, if ever, deliver, and then they receive those creators' monetization checks first, take out their percentages, and then let the rest of the money flow through to whom it actually belongs. The thing is, the fact that they get the money first allows them to present themselves to investors as if the total amount of income is actually theirs, which is very attractive to legacy corporate entities interested in getting into the online media business. So, legacy media gets invested into these MCNs and keeps working to make the company look like it's growing, when in fact it's more akin to a speck of dust that lucked its way into floating on top of the actual moving parts of the business, which is the people making content.
You would have MCNs getting all this ad revenue money from checks that didn't belong to them, and then ultimately go around bragging about how much money they were earning in the press, in
blogs to their big business contacts saying, look at how rich and successful we are. Don't you want to invest your money in us, become a part of our business, make it bigger, more successful, and then we all make tons of cash? Hoping deep down inside to sell off before the bottom fell out of this whole Ponzi scheme. They were businesses that were founded with good intent, but ultimately built on nothing.
Success, at least for the people running the MCN, looks like tricking gigantic companies into buying them all together, only to find out upon further inspection that the MCN is a financial Trojan horse that's basically worthless. Example given, Maker Studios, which Disney bought for over $500 million. Defy Media was angling the best they could to do exactly that, but after taking out loans with their senior creditor, Ally Bank, and being unable to pay them back properly, they began offering them the company itself as payment, which Ally Bank refused. When something like that happens, it means there's blood in the water, and soon everyone will know that the company is completely worthless, which would then lead them to lose all of their leverage. To prevent that from happening, they basically nuked the company before it could be rightly gutted for parts by its constituents, and in the process of doing that, kept the content creators' money. MatPat was just one of the MCN business model's many victims, and thankfully, he decided to articulate it publicly in a video, which was instantly praised. In a follow-up, Matt explains how Defy's remaining assets were frozen by creditors, meaning the entities that had given loans to Defy had decided to keep Defy's money for themselves. The only problem with that is that Defy's money wasn't actually their money, it was the creators' money, a fact that the creditors weren't particularly interested in acknowledging, given they stood to keep it for themselves. To this day, it's unsure if any justice will ever be done in regards to where that money actually went. And to be clear, it's not the creditors' fault, it's Defy Media's fault and the people running that company. Besides this massive controversy, which roped in massive channels, in 2019, Matt also had a much more minor participation in a FNAF-related spat over what constitutes the rightful usage of fan art in promotional material, which I guess also falls under the labyrinth of copyright and fair use, and as you can expect is a very tough thing to trudge through. However, MatPat was widely acclaimed for his take on this topic as well, so it's difficult to even call it a proper controversy. Fortunately, despite this uniquely jagged start to the year, great events also took place, as in December, the Theorist team ran a 9-hour charity stream for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. With the help of a multitude of different YouTubers who took part in it, it managed to raise well over $1 million, $500,000 of which came directly from none other than Scott Cawthon, creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, who was actively following the stream. The charity live stream for the St. Jude's Children's Hospital was such a success that, after a year, they did it again, this time managing to raise $3 million. The following years also had charity live streams, and I gotta say, it's pretty great when YouTubers team up to do stuff like this. 2020 was a surprisingly busy year for Matt, who launched his third theory channel, Food Theory, 5 years after having launched Film Theory. The channel gained 1 million subscribers in the first week of its launch, and another 1 million over the course of the next 4 months that succeeded. As of the production of this video, it's rapidly approaching 5 mil, marking yet another raving success in MatPat's career. 2022 saw the announcement of the 4th and final addition to the Theorist channel, which was later revealed to be Style Theory. Though the channel was only launched in early 2023, it apparently was an idea in Matt's head as early as 2014, with the channel itself being created in May of 2015. Late 2022 also marks when the Theorist channel was sold to Lunar X, a software development and global media company. In the video he published about it, he explained that it would simply help lighten the burden of running their entire operation, and that he and the Theorist team would continue personally producing and hosting all of the shows, just with a little more outside help than usual when it came to the resources. In early 2023, the last remaining non-game theory show that was on the Game Theorist channel, The Science by Austin Horrigan from Shoddycast, was finally taken off the channel and began being reposted to Austin's channel due to him having left the Theorist team. To no one's surprise, he left on good terms with Matt and the rest of the team, as he retells in his video about the reasons he left. Isn't it a breath of fresh air for someone on YouTube to have their former employees not drop exposés on them? Anyway, parallel with the launch of Style Theory, Matt finally fulfilled his dream of working in theater, as he co-produced the Broadway thriller Grey House. It's pretty shocking to see how far this guy has come, from his humble, poorly recorded first episode of Game Theory as an unemployed, aspiring actor, to a decade later having 40 million combined subscribers and billions of views over 5 different channels, and being the co-owner and president of a company with over 30 employees. As someone who has YouTube as their profession as well, it's pretty inspiring to see a YouTuber actually build an online media empire completely from scratch. And hopefully it's been inspiring for you too. I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave MatPat alone. Hello friends, greaseballs, virtual women, and members of the National Bolshevik Party. Thanks so much to all of the new subscribers to my channel. I'll have you know that we do things a little differently around here. Alrighty, so, where to begin? In the time that I've been on YouTube, one of the most important conversations that I've seen had was regarding the responsibility that comes with having a large platform. There are a number of do's and don'ts that the community has outlined over the past 6 or 7 years, which have been the inspiration for a number of controversies due to the moral code imposed on creators and the desire to keep the people on YouTube safe. While not everyone agrees on what is right and wrong, there are a few things that 99.9% of people tend to agree are big no-nos from YouTubers. Namely things like copyright abuse, going after someone's sponsors, and perhaps the greatest uniter for everyone, wanting to get rid of pedophiles. A number of creators have been accused of predatory behavior in the time that I've been on YouTube, with some cases having more merit than others, some being completely untrue, and others ending in actual convictions where people are sent to jail. The subject of today's video is someone who was actually arrested for possession of illegal content, and is now back on the streets making YouTube videos. Or, he was, until YouTube deleted his channel. That man's name is Lionmaker. Minecraft is a game that's extremely popular today, with plenty of YouTubers making a living off of playing variations of the game and sharing their personalities with their audience. In 2016, things were no different. Granted, the game was probably even more popular than it is now, especially among a younger demographic. Channels like Sky Does Minecraft and Captain Sparkles were experiencing their absolute peak in popularity, easily raking in millions of views on each and every video they uploaded to their channels. And with this popularity also came quite a bit of controversy. Some of these popular Minecraft creators ended up being pretty big creeps who were also using their audience for nefarious purposes. There was quite a number of accusations of sexual misconduct among popular creators, with some of the more high-profile cases being the stories of Basherverse, L for Lee, AA12, and the subject of today's video, Lionmaker. Lionmaker Studios was a very popular channel with nearly 600,000 subscribers, being very well known in the Minecraft community. He frequently collaborated with other popular Minecrafters like Stampy Longhead and Sky Does Minecraft, having a very positive reputation in the community and being well liked by pretty much everyone around for the first year and a half of his channel's existence. However, all of this smooth sailing would quickly turn into chop for Lionmaker, when on September 15th of 2015, Keemstar uploaded a video where he interviewed the mother of a young girl claiming that Lion had asked her for explicit images over Twitter messages. Most people took the story at face value and it quickly blew up in the community, especially given how the mother stated that Lion had full knowledge of the age of the girl he was talking to when he requested nude photos of her.
Now, how old is your daughter, Susie?
She's 13 years old.
She's 13. So, 27-year-old Minecraft YouTuber that she's a fan of, ask your daughter to move the conversation to Skype. What happens next?
Well, at this point in time, I didn't know he was 27 or 26 or whatever age he's supposed to be. It was just, this was a person that I had no idea who was asking my 13-year-old daughter for nudes. And that was, for fans go, inappropriate.
Absolutely.
Following this, Lion claimed that he was hacked and someone else had asked this girl for photos, which further perplexed Keemstar and the audience watching from home. But even with this very odd-looking screenshot in mind, Lionmaker's story still seemed much less believable than what she had to say on the matter. All was quiet for the story, and it slowly faded from the public's interest until 3 months later, when Lionmaker was again accused of soliciting images from minors, this time from 2 male teenagers. One of these instances appeared to be Lion trying to coax the young boy into sending him images, and in the other, he allegedly offered $500 in exchange for explicit images. The following episode of Drama Alert was uploaded on Christmas Eve of 2015, where one of the victims details his interactions with Lion.
And when he was 15, Lionmaker started linking him a lot of porn on Skype, and then asked him for nudes and offered to pay him $500. And when Steven was like, really? Lionmaker sent him the $500.
The same month, it would come out that Lionmaker had engaged in an online relationship with a girl who was just 16 years old. Keep in mind that the man dating her was 27 years of age. And while Keemstar was the man who initially broke the story, it would become even more infamous when it managed to attract the ire of YouTube commentators like Pyrocynical.
The story actually starts a few months ago. Originally, Lionmaker DM'd a little girl, 13 years old, asking her for nudes.
While most of these videos provided very surface level analysis of the situation,
That's pretty gay, mate.
YouTuber Colossal is Crazy managed to do a video about it that made sense of the entire mess, criticizing everyone involved and giving audiences a very easy to digest summary of the drama, ending with the conclusion that Lion Maker should have his own channel removed from YouTube because of the danger that he posed to young audiences.
What I do know is that even if Lion Maker is telling the truth about everything, he does not deserve to keep his channel. His audience are vulnerable children, and he was in a relationship with a girl over a decade his junior. With the allegations he's facing, it is disgusting to me that YouTube has allowed him to go unnoticed and continue to make videos for this highly impressionable audience.
Colossal also explained the story up until then in a nutshell, with the following being a basic rundown. Lion Maker had become acquainted with a young girl with a Minecraft channel of her own, called Paige the Panda. They met over the internet, and at some point their conversations became intimate in nature, with it being assumed that Lion had requested that she send him explicit images of herself. This alone is disgusting enough, and people were confident that they didn't want him to continue having a platform. But this story would take a few more truly bizarre turns before it was over. In typical fashion, Daniel Keem had been covering the story extensively on his own channel, putting out video after video talking about the updates to the story and documenting each new accusation that would be revealed.
There are pedophiles in the Minecraft community. There are pedophiles in the Minecraft community. There are pedophiles in the Minecraft community. This guy is a pedophile.
Lion Maker had been spending his time having mental breakdowns on social media, and it was clear to most watching that his mental health was starting to take a turn for the worse. This culminated in Lion Maker publicly posting nude images of Paige the Panda on his Twitter account for thousands to see. Naturally, people were disgusted by this and attempted to flag his account down to get it suspended so that the images wouldn't spread any further. Lion then, in an attempt to gain some sympathy from his followers and the people following the story, posted an image of him supposedly having cut himself. Commentators like Colossal is Crazy quickly chalked this up to Lion Maker grasping for sympathy because the same image could easily be found by reverse image searching on Google. Lion would go on to further dig his own grave by claiming that his Twitter was actually hacked and that he was not responsible for any of what happened on his account. Keep in mind this wasn't the first time he had used this explanation by this point. Needless to say, almost no one took this as an adequate explanation for what happened, and most assumed he was lying. His downward spiral would continue with several manipulative videos where he tried to discredit the entire narrative by exposing Keemstar, crying on camera to his fans and begging for sympathy, threatening legal action against people talking about him, as well as trying to justify his relationship with a girl that young by citing the fact that their relationship was technically legal due to age consent laws in Europe being much more relaxed than they are in the United States. But none of these videos would successfully redeem Lion and prove to everyone why Keemstar was the master manipulator, as I'm sure he would have hoped he could prove in his videos. The spotlight was still on Marcus, and it became clear to him that he wouldn't be able to save his reputation on his own, leading him to agree to something that almost no one saw coming at the time. After a year of the story unfolding, Lion Maker agreed to participate in an interview video on Colossal's channel. This video would pose a number of important questions to Marcus, giving him an opportunity to give his side of the controversy and answer all of the burning questions that the public had for him. The entire interview is a very interesting watch for those familiar with the situation, especially because of the way that Lion Maker answers questions.
I said, you were 27, she was 16, I said that was fucked up and wrong and sick. You can say the same for me. If I'm in a relationship with a 16-year-old, I'm 28, so I'm 18. Is that fucked up? It's a very, very simple question. You only have to answer yes or no.
I don't, Colossal. Because
I find it interesting that you're dodging that question when it's a very simple
I'm not
question.
dodging the question.
I don't think you can answer it. I think your moral compass is completely fucked and you can't answer it.
The assumption one must make here is that Lion Maker thought doing this video would be beneficial for him, and at least partially clear his name. Unfortunately for him, it really ended up doing anything but. Lion has an extremely hard time explaining whether or not his relationship with Paige was sexual. He has a very hard time explaining his philosophy on appropriate age gaps, who he considers to be a child, and he has a hard time talking about how intimate their conversations actually were. The entire thing showed that he was very weaselly and unable to keep his story straight, the result of which being that rather than clearing his name as he hoped he would, he managed to muddy the waters around the story even more.
If I'm a 28-year-old man and I'm in a relationship with a 16-year-old, is that wrong?
Who am I to judge? I'm
you
not.
can't judge. It's an opinion. It's a moral question.
No. I'm not playing this game, Colossal.
It's not a game. It's not a game.
It is. It is
a genuine moral question.
No, this is not a genuine question because this is
I don't know why you're dodging it.
I'm not dodging it. I just gave you where I stand. I just told you where I stand. If I know who's involved, I don't know you from Adam and Eve. I wouldn't know the girl that you're with from Adam and Eve. I don't know your story. I don't know what is going on. Who am I to sit here and say that's fucked up?
Of course you can, because that's your opinion. Is it a moral problem for me, a 28-year-old man, to date a 16-year-old?
At this point, people really weren't sure where to go with the story. By all means, it had been one of the crazier sagas of the year, ending in the total destruction of Lion Maker's reputation. By 2017, none of his former friends would be willing to collaborate with him, his fans had lost interest in his channel, and the story had completely consumed his life. Anything he would do to try and prove his innocence by then would be in vain. On January 20th, 2018, the Lion Maker channel was removed from YouTube, but by then, almost no one cared. All would be silent for the story until December of that year, when Paige the Panda would return to the internet to give her recollection of events, nearly 3 years after it all began. She claimed that Lion had been in jail for some time, which was also confirmed by an email that Lion had sent to Colossal. However, as YouTuber SunnyV2 would point out, this doesn't exactly add up, as during the time Lion had claimed to have been in jail, videos were still being uploaded on the Lion Maker channel.
Perhaps someone else was uploading videos on the channel at the time, or perhaps he was on house arrest, or something where he still had access to his computer and just called it jail for the sake of understandable wording. I can't open any of the old videos to confirm if it was someone else uploading since they're all now deleted, but it's odd that the videos were still being uploaded despite Marcus apparently being in jail.
This question wouldn't be answered at the time, and there are still some questions around whether or not he actually went to jail, and whether or not there were more victims involved. According to Paige, Lion Maker was in fact drunk when he messaged the 13-year-old girl, and there were other people around at the time to confirm it. She also said that he was never hacked at any point. He had some kind of mental breakdown, made a bunch of dumb tweets, posted pictures of her, and the hacker narrative was completely fabricated in an attempt to save his own ass. Not surprising in the least, but it's good to hear it from someone who knew him at the time, just so we know there's no doubt that he lied. It would seem that this entire story would be wrapped up with nothing else to say about it. Lion Maker had disappeared from the internet for 3 years. All of the evidence against him had been laid out in full, with his reputation floating somewhere in the depths of a sewage plant. Paige had come out against him to give her side of the story at long last, and people had pretty much lost interest in the tale altogether. However, to my surprise, and the surprise of everyone else, in January of 2019, the hero of our story returned to YouTube to set the story straight and prove to everyone why they're wrong. He was going to clean up his reputation and prove to the world why Keemstar, Colossal is crazy, Pyro cynical, and everyone who ever said anything ill of him would rue the day that they acted like slanderous pieces of shit. Except, of course, that's not what happened, and instead, he just made a fool out of himself.